Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. And apparently, when I was actually doing the webinar yesterday, I forgot to click on the record button, and only midway did I realize that I'm not recording it. And so I thought I would just re-record it again. So this is going to be a very similar session to what I conducted yesterday. The only thing being that the Q&A part will be missing, which is fine because either way I would have removed it. Assuming that some of these participants would not want their information public, and especially in the context of their business. Uh, so yeah, let's go through this entire session. I'm going to share my screen now, keep my video off for a while. And then, like I said, this session is going to be very, very interactive. So while you are listening to what I say, I will also share a workbook with you in the email so that you can go through the exercises that I'm speaking about. So there's going to be probably like 5 minutes of talking and then one exercise, and 5 minutes of talking and then exercise. And the entire goal of this is to not give you too much information where you are just loaded with a lot of data, but you cannot do anything on the other end. The goal is to give you a little bit, but be able to implement it. So there are exercises in the workbook and there are templates that will help you go through a research campaign. So yeah, let's get on with it. I'm gonna switch my video off and then share my screen, and just open the presentation now. Go back to the first page. Let's minimize this. And yeah, so the topic of the webinar is how to validate your startup idea. And we've all gone through this. And just to speak a little bit about my experience, so I used to work in IT, did that for a number of years, and then I switched to building my own agency. And while I was working in IT, I used to be very active in the London startup scene. And through that, I was able to build a very decent network. And while my network was growing, I was also starting to help a bunch of founders with their tasks, which was mostly aggregated around content, but also around helping them with market research and customer interviews and things like that. Uh, and eventually, what happened is when I wanted to build something full time, I felt that there was certainly a need in the market for a service like this. So, beginning of last year, I quit my job, started doing this full time, and right now we are a team of 6 people with a combination of research and design. We have worked with 15 plus startups in the past year itself, and we help them with product and marketing insights based on, product and marketing strategies based on customer insights. A lot of our customers fall into two buckets. One is somebody who is trying to validate an idea. They have some basic understanding of what they want to build, some basic understanding of who their buyer personas could be, but they want that idea validated in the market. And the other bucket is founders who have made millions of dollars, their product is going well, but probably they are stuck at a certain level and they do not know where to go from there. Probably they have like too many buyer personas, they have too many feature requests, they have too many marketing campaigns that they can think of, and they do not know what to prioritize. And in this case, we come and speak with the customers, compare them with the market, and then basically help them unlock that. And we have worked with consumer SaaS, B2B agencies, VCs, and creators of uh, all kinds, based on our internal projects, but also based on the projects that we have done in partnership with M&A firms, marketing agencies, branding agencies, and all of those different things. And while doing that as a full-time person in the past 2 years, being connected with all of these different startups and having lots and lots of conversations with founders, what I've come to realize is that there are a few huge barriers that every single founder faces when they are trying to validate their idea. And the entire goal of this presentation is to help you unlock some of those. Obviously, 40-45 minutes is not enough time for me to take you through every sort of barrier. And the other thing is, even if I give you everything theoretically, when you try to implement it in the real world, you will certainly face some issues that I might not have thought of, and that is where you need some hand holding. But hopefully, this presentation gives you something to work on, and at least there are three things that will be covered in this presentation, where I don't think you're going to face a lot of bottlenecks in those areas if you actually try to implement it. Uh, when I think about research, I basically try to divide it into three parts. One is the pre-research phase where you are thinking about, you're basically building assumptions, and the assumptions are probably these are my buyer personas. The second assumption is based off of the buyer personas that I think are going to buy my product. These are probably the channels in which they hang out. And the third assumption, or not an assumption, but the third exercise you do from that is you try to craft an outreach message, and then you try to DM or email or try to connect with a bunch of people in the physical world. The second phase is the during research process, and this is a combination of science as well as art. And when I say science, I mean sheer numbers. I see a lot of founders who quit too early when they are trying to validate their idea. And one of the things that have happened as a result of lots of people speaking about market research on Twitter and on LinkedIn is that for some reason founders think it has to be easy, and it is not. It's like running any cold email campaign where your response rates are going to be very low. So if you have messaged 15 people, which I've seen over and over again, is that somebody will message 10, 15 people, and if they don't get a response, they think that their idea is invalidated. You should at least send messages to 100 people, just because it's like a cold email campaign and people don't want to be sold. And in this case, you are asking somebody who is very busy for 20 to 30 minutes of their time for your idea. And that's the science part. The sheer number has to be big for you to be able to get some result. The art part is how do you craft a message in a way that even if you're trying to buy somebody's time for free, it doesn't sound so salesy and it doesn't sound so selfish. And that is the art part. And I'll give you a few templates that you can play around with that will help you overcome that barrier. And the third phase is the post research phase. You have all the data, you have that aggregated in a data dump, and now you want to pull out insights from that data. So one part of it is analyzing that data, whether you do it through visualizations like Power BI or Tableau, or you do it through algorithms that will help you crunch through uh, probably hundreds of thousands of data points if you're working on a really large project, or you can do it manually if it is a small project. And that is the analysis part. The second part of it is the recommendation part. Two people can look at the same data dump, look at the same data analysis, and come up with two different recommendations, and one can work really well, the other probably will not work as well as the first one. And that again is the art part, and the only way to train your mind around it is to read a lot, connect with a lot of founders, and see what's happening in the market. Now, in this presentation, I'm only going to focus on pre-research phase. Like I said, there's not enough time in 40-45 minutes to go through everything, but I'll take you through the pre-research phase, and then we will cover the during research and the post-research phases in future webinars that we do in 2 to 4 weeks. And the goal is to give everybody all the pieces that they would need, but not make it too heavy so that they are not able to implement it. So I've broken the entire sort of uh, course, if you will, into pieces that are easier to digest for you and easier to implement. Either way, if you don't nail down the pre-research phase, the during research phase doesn't matter, and same for the other parts as well. So the goal is to pick one part, nail it, and then move on to the next part. So let's move on to the next slide. In the pre-research phase, there's only three things that founders worry about. The first is, I don't know who my buyers are, and that is totally fine. I meet a lot of founders who have a very good understanding of, hey, Abhishek, I want to speak with this particular buyer persona, and that's the goal. They know what they're building, they know who they want to reach out to. Probably they are not really good at research, so they need help there. Probably they are good at research, but they're looking for a second opinion because they're going to spend probably $1 million on that idea. It's good to have a second opinion. Or in some cases, They do not want a second opinion. They think they are really good at the research part, but they are finding it very difficult to recruit participants, and that's when they come to us. In some cases, these founders don't have an idea of who their buyer is, and if I ask them what your buyer personas are, they'll probably jot down 5 or 6 different buyer personas, which is also fine because the entire goal of a research project is to find who your buyers are. And so if you have 5 or 6 different buyer personas, that's totally fine. You just message all of them, and over time you will be able to narrow it down. An example of this would be we worked on this project in the beginning of the year for a company called Tiny Host. It's from London. It's a hosting platform. And when we onboarded them, I think they had 70,000 people in their CRM. And they had like 10 different buyer personas using it. And we messaged everybody and we spoke with everybody. And eventually we were able to find 3 core personas that they could sell their products to, where the features that Tiny Host had really matched with the expectations on the other end. And that is how you try to nail that down. You speak with everybody, and over time, you will be able to narrow it down to the core buyers. The second channel that people face is I don't know where they hang out. And this is a piece where the general sort of answer is that my buyers hang out on Instagram or on Facebook or on Twitter. What people forget is like everybody hangs out on Facebook and Instagram. Like there are a billion users in each of these platforms. So any buyer you can think of is probably hanging out on that platform. That's not the question that you need to answer. You need to think about what is the platform, or it can be any other, like it can be a physical community of digital community, it can be a physical sort of co-working group, it can be an online forum, whatever it is. Your buyers have to hang out in that particular place in the context of your business. So for example, I hang out on all of these social media platforms. But if somebody messages me on Instagram, I am probably 99% sure that I'm gonna not either receive it due to spam filters, or even if I receive it, I will not respond to it. Whereas on Twitter, I am more likely to respond to it. But if it's an email, then you can be 100% sure that you will probably receive a reply from me if it makes sense to me. And that is all about the context in which you found me. I'm also very responsive on Slack, where there are other founders, because that is a community that I trust. There are a bunch of communities where I'm a part of. I've been a part of them for years. And you need to think about the same, like which are the very, very specific places where your potential buyers are hanging out in the context of your business. And the third part is I don't know how to reach out to them. And like I said, the one part of it is the numbers thing, where you can't give up at 10, 15, 20 DMs. And the other part is the art bit, which is how do you craft a message that, even though it is salesy on paper, like you're asking for somebody's time, it does not sound salesy. And there are some people who are really good at writing cold emails, and they are able to get a lot of business, get a lot of customers, get a lot of research participants. And that is the goal in this presentation, is to be able to give you some templates that will allow you to have some visibility in that area and have a lot of impact. If you are able to learn some of those things, then you will be not only able to recruit participants very easily, but it also works on the business end when you're trying to find your first few customers. So yeah, that's the content, the buyer persona as a channel, and the outreach, which is science plus art. So let's go ahead with the actual meat of this presentation. And before I go with this buyer persona, let me quickly take you through uh, the worksheet that I have built. So this is a worksheet, and I will share a link to this in your email along with this presentation link. So you can open it. Please make a copy of it. Do not edit this because this is my copy. So make your own copy. Either download it or like, just copy it on your Google Sheets, and then you can work on it. Uh, and the one thing that I want to say before moving ahead is once you fill it up, if you have any questions, feel free to send me a question. But along with that, please send me this filled workbook, because that will give me some idea on what you are thinking. And then I can come up with better recommendations that is more personalized for you rather than generic. So fill this worksheet along with me. And if you have questions, feel free to send it to me via email. So let's move on through the exercise. The first thing that we will think about is who your potential buyers are. Now, when you try to find buyer persona templates online, you will see a lot of templates that are extremely comprehensive. They will be 3 pages long. They will have lots of information like what's the buyer's political leaning, what's the buyer's wife's habit, and things like that. And in most cases, if you are a startup and you're trying to find your first users or you're trying to validate an idea, you do not need so much information. Like that amount of data is probably required for Walmart and Amazon and other huge enterprises, but at your scale, you only need some basic pieces of information. The one thing that you want is not to overwhelm your potential buyers and also potential participants. So you want to keep your questions small, but the questions should be those that you really need for your product or service. But you don't need so much information as you would find in the usual templates that are available online. So, in terms of basic information, what you need is what's the age range, what's the occupation, what's the location. In terms of pain points, what you want to understand is what are they struggling with, and does your solution solve it? So, sometimes they might need something faster, which is you see a lot of 10-minute delivery startups coming up, something cheaper, which is essentially uh, Facebook ads and things like that. I mean, I'm not sure if they're cheaper, but they are certainly better in terms of performance. I guess I would have to use a different example for cheaper. Probably Chinese electric vehicles come under that scenario. Uh, or struggles with time management, which can be a productivity tool on the other end. So you have to think about what the pain points of your customers are. Uh, and then the other question is, what do they want to achieve? What happens on the other end of using your product or service? So, for example, my goal was to get a few participants who are struggling with market research. And at the end of this presentation, they will have a basic understanding of who their buyers are, and they will have a basic understanding of what the potential channels are, and they will have a messaging template that they can use, and the expectation that they have to at least message 100 people before they can come to a specific conclusion, and that's the end goal. uh, and then what's the buying trigger? What is it that motivates them to buy? uh, there is, like, timing matters a lot in business, and if you can time your products correctly, then it's going to make a lot of sense. And I guess a good example would be that, we speak with a lot of customers, and essentially any founder who is trying to validate an idea is a fit for us. But if we approach them at a time when they are not prioritizing research, especially if they are founders who have an existing product and they are making money through it, then it's going to be very difficult for us to make a sale. Whereas if we can time things currently, if we can look at certain signals online or by meeting these people, and if you can track those signals, then it makes it easier for us to sell to these founders, and that is true for every business. And so you need to understand what those buying triggers are. If you are building, say, something in the photography niche, and it is specifically targeted to somebody who is about to get married, then you know that the buying trigger would be probably 6 months before the marriage. And now you need to look for signals that will allow you to find these people online, because I'm assuming that most of these people are not like explicitly sharing that. Probably there are other signals. Probably these people get engaged 6 months before marriage in their cultures, and you're tracking these people online by some method, and that allows you to target these people at a very, very specific time. So now that we have some basic understanding of what a buyer persona could be, let's go to the workbook and try to fill it. Now, in yesterday's presentation, I did this in real time, so I will not fill this up again. But I will teach you through the thoughts that I had regarding my business when I was filling it up, and you can do the same while I'm doing that. So, in terms of basic information, deep research customers are founders in the age range of 28 to 50, and they mostly live in the US and the UK. Now, we have had customers from India, from France, from Africa, and other areas, from Australia, but we like those are very few and far in between. Whereas from the US and UK, almost all of our customers fall under this bucket. So that's our core buyer persona. In terms of the pain points, most of these founders are struggling with product market fit, and that can be a lot of things. It can be that the features that they are building are not relevant. It can also be that the features are fine, but the personas that they are targeting are not the right ones. Probably they have nailed both of them down and the pricing is not correct, or probably their messaging is not right. So, all of that falls under the product market fit bucket because they are still trying to find if this thing is going to work. And so that is the pain point that these founders are struggling with. And all of these, along with other things, can be resolved by running a customer research campaign. And that is what the pain points of my customers are. So in that scenario, think about what the pain points of your customer are. Then the goal that they want to achieve, if they are a seed round startup, then the goal that they want to achieve is to be able to raise the next round. For that, they want to show some metrics to their investors. And for that to happen, they need some unlock on the product or marketing level. If it is somebody who is a solo founder and he is investing his own money into the business, then the goal is to become remain profitable. And in some cases, if you are making $1 million a year and you have this a vision that you want to grow it to say 10 million or go from 10 million to 100 million, that the entire goal of the founder is to grow the business. And again, you're probably stuck at a product level or a marketing level and you need that unlock. And that is the goal that is achieved as a result of working with us. And the buying trigger is a lot of times people have tried it themselves and it has not worked. Probably they find it very, very hard to recruit participants. So we have a customer right now who was finding it very difficult to recruit founders of renewable energy projects, and they came to us for recruitment purpose only. In some cases, these founders, but they want a second opinion. So Tiny Host was that example where Elston, the founder, he's like he had built the product, people were paying for it, but he needed a second brain opinion on what he should do, and he was also stuck at certain levels where he had too many buyer personas and too many feature requests, and that is something that they struggled with. Uh, and the other thing is sometimes if it is a founder's second or third business, then they're just too busy. They understand the need for research, but they're just too busy. So again, in your scenario, think about what those buying triggers are and when they might want to uh, buy a product or a service like yours. So once you have this nailed down, now you understand who your potential buyer personas are. Like I said in the beginning of the presentation, it is totally fine if you have 5 or 6 different personas. It's all right. You just message all of them, and you can run through this exercise for each of those personas. The second thing that we will cover is the channel part. So I know who my buyers are potentially, and now I want to speak with them. So, what is the channel in which these people hang out? Uh, like I said again in the beginning of the presentation, when you think about platforms, think about very, very specific places. So if you're thinking Facebook, think about what is the Facebook group that is related to my business. If you are building something, say in the gardening niche, you want to find Facebook groups that are related to gardening and probably in your locality first, because that is where you have the strongest network, hopefully. In Reddit, you need to find very, very specific subreddits related to you. So last year we had a customer who was building a productivity related tool, and on Reddit there are a lot of productivity related channels where there are hundreds of thousands of users or even more than a million users, I think, in one of those channels. I might be wrong about the number, but I'm pretty sure it was close to a million. Uh, and in those channels, we were able to find very, very specific threads where people were asking about software solution recommendations for people struggling with ADHD, or like they were struggling with ADHD, they were struggling with focus, they were not productive in their daily lives, and they wanted software recommendations. And those are the best ways because in this thread, everybody who was looking for the same is a potential customer, and you need to speak with these people. On Twitter, many people are also asking questions on, hey, if somebody knows a design agency, can you recommend them to me? Or I'm looking to speak with XYZ. Again, always try to find small pools where these people hang out. Even on Twitter, you'll find a tech Twitter circle where if you are, say, trying to sell a virtual assistant service, then it's probably better to find people like Nick Uber and Shan Puri, see their Twitter threads on virtual assistant business that they own, and look at the comments where people are asking for recommendations. And you can probably reach out to these people and ask about their experience if you're trying to validate an idea in that area. uh, then you need to think about what are the newsletters or blogs that these people read, what are the communities that people hang out in, and what are the podcasts that they listen to. In my scenario, I think about Slack groups and events a lot because that is something that works really well for us. On the podcast and the newsletter side, I really like interview shows because then I can have some context on the person who's speaking and I can reach out to them and have a conversation with them. So those are really good triggers for us. Again, in your scenario, think about the content that these people are consuming, and it's great if it is uh, a Slack group or an offline or an online event because then you get a chance to network with newsletters, blogs, and podcasts. If those are interview shows, then again you do get a chance to have some context on the other person and email them. But if it is a general blog or a podcast where you get some advice, then it's very difficult because it's just one person writing it. Uh, but it does make sense when you're trying to target that one person. I mean, totally depends on what your business is. Uh, and the second thing that you need to think about is are there any webinars and in person conferences that I can attend? I do not recommend this to people who are building say $10 to $100 solutions because if you spend $2,000 on a conference, then it's a lot of money being spent on day one before you have validated your idea. Uh, but if you're building a B2B service where you can charge $10,000 on the other end, please, if you can spend $2,000 and get that idea validated within a few days, build your network, it totally makes sense. Uh, and then you want to think about which channels are feasible for me. And in my particular scenario, like I've been to conferences and stuff, I've been to physical networking events and things like that, and those have been very helpful for me. Whereas on the conference side, I think that I need to go to more conference to be able to build that rep and to be able to understand how to make use of them. So till now, I think any money that I've spent has been a learning experience, but I haven't got anything out of it in terms of pure monetary value. So that is a channel that is not feasible for me currently in terms of validating my idea or making a sale. I try to, think of it as a learning experience. And you should probably think about all the channels that are not feasible for you as well. And sometimes it can be a money issue, other times it can be a time issue. Probably you think that reaching out to people on Reddit is very time consuming and you can only reach out to say 10 people per day because of spam filters and a lot of people don't respond. It's also anonymous, so it's difficult to verify a lot of information. So probably due to those reasons you think that Reddit is probably not the best way to go forward for me. I mean, I just gave an example, but I can come up with bottlenecks for each of these things. And you need to think about what's feasible for me. So let's go back to the workbook and run through this exercise again. Like I said, I've already pre-filled it yesterday. but I'll take you through it. And while I'm doing that, feel free to fill things on your side and think about which channels are feasible for you. So in my scenario, the platform that I really target is Tech Twitter. I'm very active there. I have a decent network where I am able to connect with a lot of people via DMs, and that has been really good for the business, and also has been good from the very beginning when I was validating this idea. In terms of communities and newsletters. So I have mentioned communities here, which is on Slack. I am very active on Indie London, Microcomp, and Venice newsletter. And those are places where I have found a lot of like-minded people. And again, it's these are communities where I find that I can validate my ideas, because even like within our company, the product keeps on evolving. The research product that we had about 2 years back is very different from what we have right now, because it has evolved over time and it is only continuing to get better. And for all of that validation, these communities are very, very helpful. Possibly your potential buyers are not hanging out on Slack, they are probably on Discord, they are probably on Facebook group, but whatever that answer is, be very honest with it. uh, in terms of events and webinars, like I said, I have not mentioned any conferences here because at this point I don't think they are feasible for me. So I have mentioned a couple of events. I go to Nine Others dinner, which is really good. There are nine other founders there, and I find it very, very helpful. The other event that I usually try to attend is Lenny's newsletter events. I have gone to once in Bangalore and Chennai, and then I guess in terms of dinners, I mean, nine of this happens in London. There's this other guy called Michael Modoch who hosts agency networking events, both online and offline, and I've been to both of them. In fact, I'm registered for an event for the month of October, November, and December, where I'm gonna get in touch with other agencies in the UK, and that's again very feasible, works for me. And those are the areas where I find people who are like-minded. I can validate ideas and also find my potential customers and partners. And again, it's channels that are feasible for me. It's Indie London, nine others, any Slack community that I can think of. All of those channels are very, very feasible for me. What's not feasible is conferences and things like that, where I'm spending $2,000 in a single day. I'm pretty sure that once I figure it out, it's going to be useful for me, because we certainly have a high ticket product. So I guess if I can go to a conference and make one sale through that conference, it pays off for that ticket. But it is not something that I have been able to crack right now, because I've only been to a few conferences and I need to build that rep, and everything is about practice. So that's the thing. Once you have done that, now you know who your potential buyers are, and now you know the potential channels you can reach out to them. Now, just to reframe this, these are just your assumptions. You have not validated if these buyer personas are people who would buy a product, and you have not validated if these channels are going to work. So everything right now is open for experimentation. So for each of those answers, please have, at least in the channel section, please have multiple scenarios or multiple answers. For example, I've given a bunch of Slack communities, I've given a bunch of online and offline events, I've given a platform as well. So it has to be a multi-channel approach, because right now you are still testing which channel is going to work best for you. So once you know both of these things, the third part is the messaging part. And in the outreach, there's nothing to say more about the numbers part. I have already said it a couple of times. Just message 100 people before you think of anything. But the art part is where you, I guess, need some help. Uh, Whenever you are messaging people on the other end, and uh, like I mentioned previously, it's almost like running a cold email campaign. So you always have to think about what the hook is, because the person on the other end is wondering, by looking at your message, that how this stranger found me, and you need to tell that to the person that you are messaging to, for you to be able to build that trust in the very beginning. In cold emails, it is all about building trust, because if you cannot build trust, you cannot just go through that barrier that will allow you to have a conversation with a stranger. So you need a hook that tells them, uh, that gives them some context on how you found them. The other is you need to give more context on why you're reaching out to them, and it has to happen quickly. You cannot write a one page email where they are running through sentence after sentence and they're wondering what's happening here. So you have to give them a very, very quick context in terms of what the purpose is. And the third thing is you need to tell them exactly who you are, because if they can look at you and understand who you are, probably Google you or find you through LinkedIn search, then that automatically builds a lot of trust because you're being very, very truthful and upfront about your purpose. And now that you uh, understand this, I guess you should probably take some time to digest it and have some empathy and think through things from the other end. Everybody right now receives a lot of cold emails and DMs, whether it's on LinkedIn or on Twitter or on email. And we are all like, nobody wants a spam email on their other end, and nobody wants to give their time and money uh, to other people without a clear purpose. And have that empathy when you're reaching out to other people as well. And so, keeping that in mind, again, let's move back to the workbook. And this is where we will craft an outreach message for you. Uh, so, that's the example outreach message I have crafted. And with this scenario, I have also uh, basically mapped everything in terms of what the hook is, where you're telling them about who you are, and then when you're giving them some context on why you reached out. So in this scenario, I have thought of three hooks. You can play around with these three. You can also think of a lot of other hooks that can come in your mind, but there has to be a clear hook of how you found them. Now, if you're reaching out to consumers, where in this example, in a hypothetical situation, I am building a platform for fractional consultants where they can find qualified leads. So I'm reaching out to fractional consultants. Now, potentially, there are probably 100,000 or more fractional consultants in the world, and I can find a lot of them through LinkedIn. So I tell them, hey, I just came across your profile while looking for a fractional consultant. And this is something that builds automatic trust because now they have some context on how you found them. And it also gives them some idea on what kind of person you were looking for. If you are reaching out to people in the community, you will tell them, hey, I am a fellow member of this community and I thought I would reach out. That again builds trust because you are rubbing off that trust that comes from the admin of the community. And since you both are a member of that community, there is some built in trust. If it is a paid community, it's a much, much better because then the person on the other end knows that this is a filtered group and hopefully they will not find a lot of spam there. So I try to avoid communities where there are 100,000 people and try to focus on communities where there are 300 people because there is more trust there. The third hook that you can play around with is, I was looking for X, which is your persona. So in this case, I was looking for fractional consultants to speak with. And you seem to be working in the industry. Again, it's very, very open. It's very upfront. It's tell them what you were looking for. It builds trust. The second thing that you need to tell them is who you are. So in this scenario, I tell them, hey, I am an IT consultant working on a platform that does this. The reason why I told them what I'm working on is, if I use a, an entire paragraph to tell them what I'm building, it becomes very salesy. But using who I am as a starting point for telling them what I'm building, it tells these people that it's not a sales like sentence. It's like this person telling me who he is, and if he's building that platform, it's fine. It's just an introduction. Right now, you're not selling them something, but it tells them why you reached out, who you were looking for, and now they're wondering, okay, I know who this person is. I know that this person was looking for somebody like me, and this person is building a platform that probably is interesting for me. And now you move on to the last bit, which is the ask. And I tell them, hey, since you're working in the same capacity or in the same niche, I would love to connect for 20 minutes sometime this week or next and learn more about your current process of finding leads. Now, I'm going to break this sentence into multiple parts. One is uh, a lot of times you will see people asking for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. I think it's too big of an ask in anybody's mind. If you can ask for 20 minutes or so, it's totally fine, because then you can hop on a call and just ask them in the very beginning of the call that, hey, can you extend this by 10 minutes by any chance? In most scenarios, people will happily extend it once they are on the call. But if in the email itself you ask somebody for 30 minutes, like at least in my mind, it seems like a huge time investment. And I'm pretty sure it is the same on the other end as well, because I've seen this in the data. When I message people for 30 minutes or more, I get a much lower response rate than when I go for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Anything that's less than 30 is pretty fine. And if you need more time, most people, if they are not too busy, they will happily extend it, or they will ask for another slot on the calendar that they can continue this conversation, or you can do it async on email. But if you're asking for time, ask for less than 30 minutes. And then the other thing is, I am willing to connect sometime this week or next. And this is something where you're not pressuring them to connect within this week only, especially if you are messaging these people midweek on Wednesday or something. You don't want them to pressure to hop on a call within the next 2 days. And in that scenario, giving them a window of thinking about it and having some time allows you to remove that pressure from the other end, because you are already asking somebody for their time, and there is no clear win for them on the other end. So the less you ask and the less salesy it is, the better it is for you. And you're telling them, I want to learn more about your current process of finding leads. Again, it's not salesy. You're trying to learn how these people are finding leads currently. And because you have not sold them anything, in 90% of these cases, once you end the user interview call, toward the end, these people are going to ask you, hey, tell me more about the platform that you're building. And that gives you a reason to speak about the platform, probably share your screen if you have some Figma designs, and also hopefully get some verbal commitment from them if they are very, very interested. And the last thing is, you tell them, please let me know an appropriate time and I'll drop an invite. Now, this is very interesting because in a lot of cases, people uh, give people write, hey, are you interested, or would you be willing to do it? I think that reframes in the other person's mind that it is a yes or no question, and people can say no in that scenario if that is the case. Whereas if you tell them, hey, please let me know an appropriate time and I will drop an invite, you have already taken that step forward, and in their mind right now, instead of thinking this as a yes or no question, they are thinking, hey, what's my availability this week or next week? And if I am available, let's give this person a bit some time, and that's gonna probably help you convert better. Again, this has been tested over and over again internally by our team, where if we give them a yes or no question, they are more than happy to say no if the ask is too big sometimes. But if we uh, psychologically sort of nudge them to give us an appropriate time, then we usually get that time on the calendar. And yeah, I mean, this is just an example. Feel free to think of your own ways of, coming up with your own hook, coming up with your own ask and context, and you can play around with this example and other examples that you can think of. But any outreach campaign, much like a sales campaign, is a lot of experiments. So keep experimenting with buyer personas, keep experimenting with channels, keep experimenting with messaging, and eventually you will be able to figure out the best scenarios in each of these three different pieces. The good thing about running a good market research campaign is that if you have five different buyer personas and you send 50 messages to each of these personas, by the response rate itself, you will be able to determine where there is more interest. And also, once you hop on a call, you will be able to have that second layer of information as well. But an outreach campaign itself will give you some answer on what the interest is. So, I guess one example that I can give you is we had a customer who was building a solution for accountants, And the solution that they had in mind at the time was very, very simple, which had already been solved by 50 other startups. And they had not only solved that problem, but they had built better solutions that my customer was thinking of. And so when we were trying to hop on calls with these customers, one thing is accountants and lawyers, they are very tough to hop on a call with because these people charge by the hour. So when you ask them for the time, they are automatically thinking of money. So it's very difficult to speak with them without any incentive. And if that is required, then pay the incentive. There's no better way of weaving around it. And also with like C-suite level executives or niches where there's very, very difficult to find people, it's easier to pay than find for other ways of looking for these people. So not only was that a barrier, but the other barrier was also that by the response rate itself, we could see that there's no interest because they were already using software solutions that were much more advanced than my client was proposing. And our recommendation on the other end was that you should not build this because it's a very, very competitive landscape, and the MVP that you're thinking of has been solved 50 plus times, and people are already using it. And why would they pay you $10 versus some other company where there are other 10 different other features that are much more advanced that will probably take you 2 years to build? And that's a good result of a validation project as well, because the client on the other end was thinking of investing 6 months of their time and more than $100,000 on that project. So that is the best case scenario that can come out of it. If you invalidate a bad idea and you can move on to a good idea, uh, once you have another idea, instead of spending a lot of money and a lot of time in an area that will probably not work. And that's what we recommended to the client. But along with that, we also gave them three different recommendations for building products in the same niche, because we had spent a lot of time in the market and we understood the gaps in the market that were not related to what my client had proposed, but it was in the same niche but solving a different problem. And hopefully that happens with you as well if you are trying to validate or invalidate an idea. If you spend a lot of time with the people in the community, you will be able to understand a lot about the market, and sometimes you can find other opportunities in the market. But yeah, like I said, that is all in this particular workshop. We are going to do another workshop in the explaining the during research phase in terms of what questions to ask and what insights to pull from these interviews. And then we'll do a couple of more webinars and workshops on the post research phase where you are distilling that data and coming up with recommendations. All of those are going to be hands on, interactive with worksheets and everything. I'm going to email this worksheet along with this video, and then you can run through your own exercise. Again, I'm repeating what I said at the very beginning. If you have done your worksheet and if you have any questions, feel free to email me the questions along with the filled worksheet. If you do not want to do this by your own, feel free to reach out and we can do this end to end, from recruiting participants to running an outreach campaign to speaking with your customers and building product and marketing recommendations that will take you from 0 to 1 or 1 to 10 within 8 to 12 weeks, depending on how large the project is. And yeah, if you want somebody to hold your hand and run you through this exercise, then we are happy to have that conversation. So feel free to reach out to me on this website where you can directly book a call with me, or also you can email me at Abhishek, Abhishek @deepresearch.me. It's gonna be in the email also, and you can just reply to that email and probably drop another email, and we can start to have that conversation, see the bottlenecks that you're resolving, and probably in 30 to 45 minutes, you'll be able to understand the work that we'll do and see if we would be a good fit. And also we can make a decision on the requirements that you have is probably a good fit for us or not, uh, and we can take it from there. Thank you very much for having an interest in this. I really appreciate everybody who joins these calls, and this is something that we have started to do recently. So we are also building our rep in the webinar scenario. So hopefully 6 months down the line, we'll have much better workshops as a result of getting all of these feedback from you. So feel free to uh, throw any feedback from your end as well in terms of what I could have done to make this better for you. But yeah, thank you for doing this, and I'm gonna catch you later. Bye bye.